The void between stars shimmered like heat waves on summer asphalt as massive ships materialized above Earth's atmosphere. Their hulls were dark as midnight, each one the size of a small city, casting shadows across continents as they took position in orbit. The ships moved with the slow confidence of predators who had never known defeat. Commander Han-Woo Kim stood in the underground command center beneath what appeared to be downtown Seoul, watching the holographic display with calm satisfaction. The surface above showed busy streets filled with people going about their normal lives. But 3 kilometers below, the real heart of Earth's defense network hummed with quiet energy. 47 vessels, reported Lieutenant Nari Park, her fingers dancing across the tactical console like a pianist playing a deadly song. The screens around her showed detailed scans of each alien ship, information that had been gathered by hidden sensors throughout the solar system, silicon-based life forms, consistent with the hegemony profiles we've been studying for the past 30 years. The alien transmission crackled through the CUM systems, harsh and cold as winter wind. Their advanced AI translated the message instantly, displaying the words in glowing letters across the main screen. Primitive carbon-based entities. You have 72 hours to prepare for extinction. Resistance is futile. Han-Woo exchanged glances with his second-in-command, Captain Ji-Ho Lee. Both men smiled grimly, the expression of soldiers who had waited their entire lives for this moment. They had trained for this day, planned for it, dreamed of it. Now, it was finally here. Send the standard response, Han-Woo ordered, his voice steady despite the magnitude of what was about to unfold. Across the planet, similar scenes played. Out in hidden bunkers buried deep beneath the surface. Out in the Australian outback. Colonel Sunmi Young coordinated with her team from a command center disguised as an old mining facility. Her screen showed the positions of alien ships and the readiness status of defense systems that had been built in secret over 5 decades. In the Amazon rainforest, Major Dae Juncho prepared his forces from beneath what appeared to be untouched jungle. His facility was so well hidden that even the trees growing above it were real, their roots extending down into the upper levels of the military complex. The message went out simultaneously from every continent, transmitted on frequencies the aliens would easily detect. We've been waiting for you. The hegemony ships, led by the crystalline entity known as Vexstar, registered confusion at the response. Their massive forms pulsed with colors that indicated surprise and uncertainty. Their scouts had detected a primitive civilization barely capable of reaching their own moon. The cities above showed no signs of advanced military technology. No orbital defense platforms. No weapons that could threaten their mighty fleet. Vexstar's body resonated with the harmonic frequencies his species used for communication. This response is unexpected, he told his subordinates, his voice like wind chimes in a storm. Other species beg for mercy or try to negotiate. These humans seem almost ... pleased. What the hegemony didn't know was that humanity had been preparing for this moment for 50 years. It had begun with the first probe they had sent to Earth's system, a small scout vessel that had been captured by a secret military operation. The aliens had assumed it was destroyed by a solar flare, but in reality, it had been taken apart piece by piece in underground laboratories. The real cities lay kilometers underground, connected by maglev tunnels that could transport people and supplies at incredible speeds. The surface structures were elaborate decoys, maintained by automated systems, while 90% of Earth's population lived in vast subterranean complexes. Every building, every street, every park on the surface was designed to look primitive and helpless. Lieutenant Borshin monitored the alien communications from her post in the Himalayan command center, built inside what appeared to be a simple mountain observatory. They're beginning standard sterilization protocols, she reported to her commander, Colonel Tae-ho Kim, preparing to bombard population centers. Colonel Kim nodded, his weathered face showing no emotion. Let them, he replied, watching the countdown timer that showed exactly 72 hours remaining. Our ancestors survived the Mongol invasions, the Japanese occupation, and the Korean War. These aliens have no idea what they're dealing with. As the 72-hour countdown began, humanity's true preparations came online for the first time. Hidden launch bays opened in asteroid belt mining stations that had been built over decades. The facilities looked like normal resource extraction operations, but their real purpose was to hide the massive fleet humanity had been building in secret. Cloaked weapons platforms powered up throughout the solar system. Their stealth technology, based on alien designs but improved with human engineering, and in the depths of Earth's oceans, the real fleet began to rise from underwater bases that had been constructed in oceanic trenches, where no satellite could see them. The hegemony had come to end what they believed was a primitive world, another easy conquest in their 1,000-year expansion across the galaxy. They were about to discover that Earth was just getting started, that humanity had been preparing for this war longer than some civilizations had existed. The hunt was about to begin, but the hunters were about to become the hunted. The orbital bombardment began precisely on schedule. Vexstar watched with satisfaction as energy beams lanced down from the hegemony fleet, striking the major population centers. The primitive structures crumbled exactly as expected. Then the humans responded. "What is that?" Vexstar's subordinate Kethron pointed at the tactical display with one of his crystalline appendages. Massive structures were rising from Earth's oceans like ancient sea monsters awakening from deep sleep. These were not ships, but weapons platforms the size of small cities, water cascading off their dark metal surfaces as they breached the surface. Captain Ji-Ho Lee stood in the primary command center, now revealed to be a massive underground complex that stretched for dozens of square kilometers beneath the Korean peninsula. The walls hummed with energy as thousands of screens showed the battle unfolding above. "Fire," he commanded simply, his voice carrying the weight of 50 years of preparation. The ocean-based defense platforms opened fire simultaneously. Particle beams and kinetic projectiles streaked upward like angry lightning, striking the lowest hegemony vessels. The alien shields flared bright blue and died under the concentrated assault. Two of the smaller ships exploded in brilliant fireballs that lit up the night sky, but that was just the beginning. Lieutenant Nari Park coordinated the next phase from her station, her hands moving across holographic controls that appeared in the air before her. "Surface decoys are down. All civilian populations secured. Initiating Phase 2. Her voice was calm and professional, but her eyes burned with determination. Across the planet, what the hegemony had thought were primitive cities revealed their true nature. The ruins collapsed inward with thunderous roars, revealing massive launch bays hidden beneath. The fake buildings had been nothing more than elaborate covers for humanity's real military installations. In the Amazon rainforest, Major Dae-Young Cho stood in his command bunker as trees and fake villages fell away around him. "All fighters, you are cleared for launch," he announced into his headset. The jungle floor split open like a giant mouth, revealing rows of sleek fighters that had been waiting in darkness for this moment. Thousands of human fighters swarmed upward from hidden bases across the globe. Their stealth systems made them nearly invisible to alien sensors, appearing on hegemony screens as nothing more than electronic ghosts. Each pilot had trained for this day since childhood. Knowing that Earth's survival depended on their skill, pilot Sujin Kim pulled her fighter into a steep climb, her hands steady on the controls despite the crushing acceleration. "Dragon Squadron, form up on me," she called to her wingmates. "Time to show these aliens what Earth pilots can do." The human fighters moved unlike anything the hegemony had ever encountered. They didn't fly in neat formations like other species. Instead, they hunted in packs, using the debris field from their own destroyed decoy cities as cover. Each pilot flew as if their ship was part of their own body, pulling maneuvers that would have killed most alien species, Captain. Sun Mi-Yang watched from the lunar command post as her greatest secret revealed itself. The moon's surface split open along hidden seams, revealing massive railguns that had been built into the lunar rock itself. "All batteries, you are free to engage," she announced. The electromagnetic launchers fired solid tungsten projectiles at incredible speeds. The metal slugs moved so fast they glowed white-hot as they streaked through space, turning hegemony ships into expanding clouds of debris and superheated gas. Back on the flagship, Vexstar's crystalline body resonated with frequencies of panic. His species communicated through harmonic vibrations, and right now his entire form was singing a song of terror. "How is this possible?" he demanded of his tactical officer. "Our intelligence indicated they were barely capable of reaching their own moon." "Sir," Communications Officer Kethron reported, his voice trembling through the ship's speakers, "we're receiving a transmission from the humans." The message appeared on their screens in perfect hegemony script. The translation was simple and chilling. "You wanted to play? Game on." Below them, more human ships were rising from the Pacific Ocean. These weren't the massive defense platforms. Sleek destroyers that had been hidden in underwater bases, moved with deadly grace, their hulls designed to slice through water. In space with equal efficiency, Commander Hyunwoo Kim stood in Earth's primary command center, watching the battle unfold on screens that showed every corner of the solar system. "Phase 3 is authorized," he announced to his staff. "Release the asteroid fleet." In the asteroid belt, what the hegemony had assumed were normal space rocks suddenly came alive. Engines ignited across hundreds of hidden ships, each one carved from the interior of an asteroid and armed with weapons that Earth's best scientists had spent decades perfecting. The hegemony fleet tried to retreat to a safe distance, but there was nowhere to run. Human ships were everywhere, striking from angles that should have been impossible. The aliens' superior technology meant nothing when faced with pilots who had trained their entire lives for this single battle. Vexstar realized with growing horror that they hadn't invaded a primitive world. They had walked into a trap that had been 50 years in the making. The humans had been waiting, preparing, planning for this exact moment. And now the hunters had become the hunted. The hegemony fleet tried to withdraw to a safe distance. But Earth's defenders weren't finished. What happened next defied everything. The aliens thought they knew about warfare. Specialist Ji Tae-wan materialized inside the hegemony flagship's engineering section like a shadow given form. His stealth suit bent light around his body, making him nearly invisible to both visual and electronic sensors. He had been launched from Earth in a single-person infiltration pod no bigger than a coffin, using the chaos of the space battle to slip through their defenses undetected. "Infiltration successful," he whispered into his comm device, his voice barely audible even to himself. "Beginning sabotage protocols." Git moved through the alien ship with practiced silence, his boots making no sound on the crystalline floors. The hegemony had built their vessels for their own massive silicon-based bodies, leaving gaps in maintenance areas that they never imagined another species could use. To them, these spaces were too small to matter. To a human, they were highways into the heart of their enemy's power. Throughout the hegemony fleet, similar scenes played out like a coordinated nightmare. Humanity's special forces had trained for decades in zero-gravity combat, studying every piece of captured alien technology and preparing for exactly this scenario. They moved through the alien ships like ghosts, using maintenance tunnels and ventilation systems that the larger crystalline entities couldn't access. Sergeant Hwa Yoo-jin Kim led her 5-person team through the corridors of a hegemony cruiser there. Weapons modified with special frequency emitters designed to shatter crystalline lifeforms. The aliens' bodies, which seemed so strong and beautiful, a fatal weakness that human scientists had discovered years ago. Remember, she broadcast to her squad through their helmet comms? "We're not just here to destroy, we're here to learn." Team moved like a pack of wolves through the ship's interior. Private Minho Park disabled the life support systems while Corporal Haijin Lee planted charges on the main reactor. They worked in perfect silence, communicating through hand signals they had practiced thousands of times in Earth's training facilities. The psychological impact on the hegemony was more devastating than any weapon. Their species had evolved on peaceful worlds where conflict was rare, where victory went to whoever had superior technology and larger numbers. They had never faced an enemy that turned their own ships into battlegrounds that appeared inside their most secure spaces like demons from their worst nightmares. "Sir," Kethron's voice cracked with panic as he addressed Vexstar on the flagship's bridge. "We're detecting movement inside our ships. Multiple contacts, but they're too small to be our personnel." Vexter's crystalline form rang with harmonics of confusion and fear. That's impossible. Our security systems would detect any intruder. The systems are being disabled from the inside, Catherine reported, his body flickering with the rapid color changes that indicated extreme stress in his species. We're losing contact with engineering sections across the fleet. On the cruiser Dawn's Edge, Sergeant Eugen Kim's team had reached the ship's computer core. The massive crystalline matrix that served as the vessel's brain pulsed with alien thoughts and calculations. "Remember your training," Eugen whispered to her team. "We need the data intact." Specialist Dong Hain Yu connected his portable computer to the alien system, his fingers flying across the interface. Years of studying captured hegemony technology had taught human programmers how to speak their digital language. "I'm in," he announced quietly, downloading their star charts, troop movements, everything. The aliens had never encountered an enemy that fought this way. Other species they had conquered fought ship to ship, technology against technology. But humans had learned to fight like viruses, infiltrating and spreading through their enemy's body until they controlled it from within. Captain Ji-Ho Lee monitored the infiltration from Earth's command center, watching as green dots representing human operatives move through the alien fleet like antibodies through a diseased system. "Phase 4 is authorized," he announced too. His staff began the hunt. The human fighters that had been engaging the hegemony fleet suddenly changed tactics. Instead of attacking the alien ship's weapons and shields, they began targeting specific sections with surgical precision. Each strike was coordinated with the infiltration teams inside, creating maximum chaos and confusion. Pilot Sujin Kim rolled her fighter beneath a hegemony destroyer, her weapons targeting the exact spot where Gituan had planted his charges. "Dragon Leader 2 Infiltration Team 3, she called over the comm. "Package delivered. You're clear to light the candle." The explosion that followed was perfectly timed. The destroyer's main reactor went critical just as its structural supports failed, tearing the massive ship apart from the inside. But the human infiltrators were already gone, extracted by their fighter escorts before the ship died. Vextar watched his fleet being torn apart by an enemy that seemed to be everywhere at once. His ships were being destroyed not by superior firepower, but by creatures that had somehow learned to turn their own technology against them. "How do they know our weaknesses?" he demanded of his tactical staff. The answer came from intelligence. Officer Yethmar, whose body was dim with defeat. "Sir, they've been studying us. Every probe we've sent, every scout ship we've lost in this system over the past 50 years, they've been learning from our technology, preparing for this exact moment." The hegemony fleet was no longer hunting primitive prey. They had become the hunted, and their hunters were inside their own ships, learning their secrets and turning their strength into weakness. The hegemony reinforcements arrived to find their invasion fleet in ruins. Fleet Commander Zarketh brought 1,000 ships, confident that overwhelming force would crush these unexpected human defenders. His crystalline form pulsed with anger as he surveyed the wreckage floating in Earth's orbit. He was wrong, Dr. Haywan. Lee worked frantically in her laboratory buried beneath the Pacific Ocean floor, 3 kilometers down, where the water pressure would crush any normal building. "The biological agents they're deploying," she reported to her team through the intercom. "They're designed to target carbon-based life forms with specific genetic markers." Her assistant, Dr. Junho Park, looked up from his microscope with worry etched across his face. "Will they work?" he asked, watching the alien virus samples under high magnification. Haywan smiled grimly as she studied the data streaming across her screens. "They might have if we were any other species, but we're from Earth." She gestured to the wall displays showing humanity's evolutionary history, millions of years of survival against impossible odds. "We've survived ice ages, plague outbreaks, volcanic winters, and mass extinctions. Our immune systems don't just adapt, they weaponize." The hegemony's bioweapons not only failed, but seemed to make humans stronger. What they didn't understand was that Earth was a death world, a planet where evolution had forged humanity in constant conflict with hostile environments. predators, and diseases that would have destroyed any other species. Above the laboratory, the alien plague clouds drifted through Earth's atmosphere like green mist. The hegemony watched from their ships, expecting to see billions of humans dying in agony. Instead, they saw something impossible. The humans weren't just surviving, they were thriving. General Taemin Kim stood in the war room, surrounded by his staff as reports flooded in from around the globe. "They're trying psychological warfare now," reported Intelligence Officer Sol Young Lee, her voice steady despite the horrific images flashing on the screens around them. Broadcasting images designed to induce terror and despair. The room fell, silent as the alien transmissions played. The screen showed scenes of cosmic horror, civilizations being ground to dust, entire worlds burning in the void of space. The images were designed to break the human mind, to make them surrender in pure terror. Major Sang-woo Park broke the silence first, his voice filled with confused amusement. "That's it. My 8-year-old daughter's video games are scarier than this." The laughter that followed was not the response the hegemony had expected. These humans were watching their psychological warfare and treating it like entertainment. Some were even taking notes, as if studying the aliens' techniques for their own use. Fleet Commander Zarkith felt something he had never experienced before: genuine fear. His species had conquered 1,000 worlds using these same methods. The bioweapons had wiped out entire civilizations. The psychological attacks had broken the will of species that had fought for centuries. But these humans were different. Captain Nari Park led her squadron against the reinforcement fleet, her ship weaving between enemy vessels with impossible grace. Her fighter pulled maneuvers that should have liquefied her internal organs, but she flew as if gravity was just a suggestion. "All units, remember what we learned about their weaknesses," she called over the comm. "They can't adapt to rapid tactical changes." The human fleet had studied the wreckage of the first hegemony ships, taking apart their technology piece by piece. But more importantly, they had learned something fundamental about their enemy. The aliens were powerful, but they were also predictable. They followed patterns, stuck to plans, and couldn't handle chaos. Humans lived in chaos. They had evolved in it, been shaped by it, learned to love it. Colonel Dae-jung Cho coordinated the ground assault on the hegemony's forward base, which they had foolishly established on Mars. "They're retreating again," he reported with satisfaction. "Watching the alien forces pull back from human advanced teams, they can't understand why we keep coming." The truth was simple, but terrifying to the hegemony. Humanity had evolved on a world where survival meant constant struggle. Every other species in the galaxy had evolved on worlds where resources were abundant and conflict was rare. The hegemony had mistaken their own evolutionary advantages for inherent superiority. Dr. Haewon Lee emerged from her laboratory with news that would change everything. "The biological agents they used," she announced to the assembled military leaders, "we've reverse-engineered them. Not only are we immune, but we can now target their silicon-based biology." The implications were staggering. Hegemony had given humanity the tools to fight back on a biological level. Their attempt to destroy the human species had instead taught humans how to destroy them. Fleet Commander Zarkith received the reports with growing horror. The humans weren't just fighting back, they were learning, adapting, and evolving in real time. Every weapon the hegemony used against them was somehow turned into a tool for human advancement. "Sir," his tactical officer reported, "the humans are broadcasting a message." The transmission was simple, delivered in perfect hegemony language. "Thank you for the upgrades. Now it's our turn to play." As the reinforcement fleet began to break apart under human assault, Zarkith finally understood the terrible truth. These weren't just another primitive species to be conquered. They were apex predators from a world that had spent millions of years creating the perfect survivors, and now those survivors were loose in the galaxy, armed with alien technology and an unbreakable will to fight. 6 months after the failed invasion, the last hegemony stronghold in the solar system fell to human forces. The crystalline fortress on Europa crumbled under concentrated fire from human ships, its beautiful spires collapsing into the icy surface like broken glass. But humanity's response was just beginning. Admiral Hyenwoo Kim stood on the bridge of the newly constructed flagship, Terra's Pride, watching as the first human exploration fleet prepared for departure. The massive ship was a hybrid of human engineering and captured alien technology, its hull gleaming with armor that could survive the journey between stars. Behind it, dozens of other vessels waited in formation, each one carrying the hopes of a species that had learned to fight for freedom. Reconnaissance reports confirm it, Captain Jiho Lee announced, his voice heavy with the weight of terrible knowledge. The hegemony has been strip mining inhabited worlds for resources. Billions of sentient beings are held in slavery across hundreds of star systems. Admiral Kim's jaw tightened as he studied the holographic displays showing the scope of the hegemony's crimes. Entire civilizations had been reduced to labor camps, their people working in mines and factories until they died of exhaustion. "Then we have work to do," he replied simply. But his words carried the promise of justice. The human fleet that emerged from Earth's solar system was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. They didn't move in the rigid formations that other species used. Instead, they spread out like a hunting pack, each ship capable of independent action, but coordinated toward a single goal. They didn't conquer territories, they liberated them. They didn't enslave populations, they freed them. And they hunted the hegemony with the same relentless efficiency their ancestors had once used to hunt mammoths across the ice. Commander Sol-Young Lee led the liberation of the Alterian colonies, her task force appearing without warning in the hegemony's core systems. The aliens had grown comfortable in their dominance, never expecting an attack so deep in their own territory. "This is Terra Command," she broadcast to the enslaved populations on the planet below, her voice carrying across every communication channel. "We're here to take you home." The hegemony's response was predictable and cruel. They threatened to destroy the slave colonies rather than lose them, positioning their weapons to target the population centers. They had used this tactic for centuries, forcing other species to retreat rather than risk innocent lives. They had never faced a species that would risk everything to save strangers. Captain Bora Shin commanded the rescue operations, her ships weaving through hegemony defenses like dancers avoiding clumsy partners. Her pilots flew their vessels through impossible gaps in the enemy formations, each one carrying evacuation pods that could hold hundreds of refugees. "We don't leave anyone behind," she told her crew over the intercom, her voice steady despite the chaos around them. "That's what makes us human." The liberation of Alteria became a legend that spread across the galaxy faster than light itself. The humans had faced impossible odds and won, not through superior firepower, but through their refusal to abandon those who needed help. They had lost ships and lives in the process, but they had saved an entire civilization. The psychological impact rippled through the galaxy like a shockwave. Species that had been enslaved for generations watched in amazement as these newcomers fought, not for conquest or profit, but for the simple principle that all beings deserved freedom. The hegemony's authority began to crumble as their subjects realized we're no longer alone in the darkness. General Taemin Kim established the first Terran Commonwealth outpost in the Vega system, transforming a former hegemony weapons facility into a refugee center. The massive complex that had once built instruments of oppression now housed medical facilities, schools, and workshops where former slaves could learn new skills. "We're not here to rule," he explained to the newly freed populations, who looked at him with wonder and hope. "We're here to make sure no one rules you again." The final confrontation came at the hegemony's capital world, a massive crystalline planet that had served as the center of their empire for thousands of years. The remaining hegemony forces had gathered there for one last stand, their ships forming defensive rings around their homeworld like the petals of a dying flower. Admiral Hyenwoo Kim's fleet approached slowly, not with the eagerness of conquerors, but with the careful respect of those who understood the weight of their actions. The battle was fierce, but brief. The hegemony's rigid tactics were no match for human adaptability, and their weapons had been designed to fight other crystalline species, not the flexible carbon-based life forms from Earth. When the last hegemony ship surrendered, Admiral Kim stood before their High Council in their great crystal cathedral. His words were broadcast to every world in the galaxy, carried by the same communication networks the hegemony had used to spread fear for millennia. "You came to end us because you saw us as a threat to your order," he said, his voice calm but carrying the authority of someone who had earned the right to speak for his species. "You were right. We are a threat to any order built on oppression and fear." The galaxy that emerged from the ashes of the hegemony was different. The Terran Commonwealth became the new protectors, but they ruled through cooperation rather than force. Species that had known only slavery learned the meaning of freedom. Worlds that had been strip-mined were restored through human technology and alien knowledge working together, and throughout the galaxy, new understanding spread like sunrise after a long night. The humans had come not to dominate, but to ensure that no one would ever again mistake cruelty for strength.